Hello Animorphs fans and welcome back to the Animorphs YouTube channel. Today we're talking Animorphs Movie. Primarily this video is going to be going over my idea for an Animorphs movie plot, but the first thing I want to cover is why I think that it's necessary for us to jump on board with the Animorphs movie, because there have been a lot of people, including commenters on this channel, who are very pessimistic towards the Animorphs movie now that Michael Grant and Catherine Applegate are no longer involved with the project, and they say that they do not want to watch it. I understand why you're coming from that position, I do, but I am of the opposite point of view, completely the opposite. Because we need to support this franchise, we need it to be successful. You've got to remember that this series started a quarter of a century ago. That's a long time. It's an old series, and it's a very small cult following that we are. So, if we don't get something soon, we'll probably not get anything ever at all, and the franchise will just die off. A movie is a great way to get something back into public view. And as they always say, any publicity is good publicity. And I think that is definitely the case in Animorphs because it's such a small thing. It's known primarily as a meme, have you noticed? Most people out there, the average person in the public, will see an Animorphs cover and think, oh look, it's that meme. It's that meme template that I've seen a couple of times before. They don't think, oh, I remember that book series. I think, that's a meme. Some of them might, and they would have vague memories. But Animorphs needs a resurgence in some manner. And I don't think, this isn't against Chris Grine, but I don't think graphic novels is the way to really spur it back into the population. You need something big, blockbuster movie, something like that. And I covered Sev Ohanian's post on Twitter. What was for me earlier today, but for you will be last week probably, about his ideas. He's quite close to Catherine and Michael, and he said in that post thread that he will be first in line to go see this movie. So people close to the authors, they're saying, we are going to go and support this movie. And I think as the Animorphs fans, it is on us to do the same, to show support. Because do you think that Michael and Catherine want to see an Animorphs movie fail? Do you honestly for a minute believe that they've come out of this movie, backed away from it and thought, okay, I hope this fails? Maybe. I highly doubt it. I think they'll step away, say, okay, we're not really involved in this process. We're going to step out of it. But why would they? They would say, we want it to succeed. We want Animorphs to be a big thing again. And I think, look at The Shining. You remember Stephen King's The Shining, directed by Stanley Kubrick. Stephen King hated it. The guy who originally wrote the book thought it was a mess, it wasn't faithful to the books. But what gets remembered? The movie. The movie wasn't that faithful to the books, but god damn was it a good movie. And because it was such a good movie, people will go back and read the original book. I understand the pessimism that goes around, because Hollywood tends to be a pile of crap most of the time. They churn out garbage, after rubbish, after trash. Sometimes they pull off something good though. It's easy to be pessimistic when other adaptations have come up bad, but I truly do think that Animorphs has got an interesting enough formula that it can work. If done right, it will work. It's the basics of Animorphs, the fundamental stuff, the basic ingredients to this cake of Animorphs is so edible to the mind that I think if it gets done right, it will be a success. It's just got those built-in ingredients that make it good. I'm pessimistic as well, to some degree. But do you know what? I don't care. I want to see Animorphs on the big screen. Even if it turns out to be dross, I will pay money to go support that. I will buy the merchandise. I will do everything I can to make sure that this franchise moves ahead into the future. How do we do it? Right, so this is where I move on to the plot. My idea for a plot, and it's a bit of a diversion. We've seen Sev Ohanian's plot, which was very faithful to the books. For the most part, it took from other morphs and mixed it together, but the plot points were pretty much the same. I'm a bit different, and you might find my thoughts wacky, but I have thought about it, and I think I like my idea. Otherwise, I wouldn't be telling you right now, of course. The major change is right at the start. You remember how in the books, Elfangor comes down on his ship, gives the Animorphs the power to morph, and they go off. And then 3 books later, they rescue Axe. They found him in the ocean, bring him back up. The change, the big major change that I would do for an Animorphs movie, I would make it so that Axe is on the ship with Elfangor. You might be thinking, well, that's sacrilege. How dare you call yourself an Animorphs fan and say such a thing? But just hear me out. I think Axe is essential. I really do think Axe needs to be in this movie, and not just at the end. I think he needs to be there from step one, and I'll tell you why. What is popular these days? Memes. Everywhere you go, you see meme. Everywhere. You cannot get away from memes. They're just a thing. Everyone loves them. They come from films all the time. And I hate the idea of having to attack a movie from, not so much attack, but say, right, one of our first points of priority is memeage. Because that's essentially what the Emoji Movie was, and look at that. Fucking gopping. But it is a massive part. And I'm not talking about just still images. I'm talking about something that people enjoy watching on the screen. And what better to enjoy than an Andalite, this centaur alien thing, going mad over cinnamon buns. That's put it this way. What is the big meme generator in Animorphs? It's Axe, isn't it? Let's be honest. Axe is the meme machine in Animorphs. We need him there from the start to provide that light side, that bit of fun. Him marauding through a city, picking up all the bits of food and stuffing them in his face. And yeah, I think that's essential. I think we need the Axe character in there right from the start to provide that. Not only that, but I think it plays an important role as well when it comes to Jake. So Axe comes down, he's with Prince Elfangor, but Elfangor's dying, and he says, no, Axe, go with them. Go with them. I've given them the morphing power, or you give them the morphing power. No, it's got to be Elfangor giving them morphing power. They've got the morphing power. Go with them. Help them. Tell them what you know. And then he dies and what have you. At the start of book 1, not at the start, but Jake becomes the leader, and he's like, well, I guess I'm just the leader then. Having Axe there at the start to immediately say, I'm not sure if I trust a human as a leader. That's going to cause immediate tension in the group, and it gives both characters immediately something to develop on. So Jake would have to prove himself to this alien from another world. Right, these others want me to be the leader. You don't trust me, I have to prove myself as a leader. So that gives Jake already a big character development thing going ahead. And on the other side of it, Axe learning to trust his new leader from the start. Not only that, but Axe would be torn by Elfangor's decision to give the morphing power to the Animorphs, and he would be resentful over that, and it would give him that inner conflict of, I've just seen my brother give the power to these lot that are now telling me that they're in charge of me. I think that would be a really good dynamic and very interesting, and it would be nice to see how that unfolds, in my opinion. So going forward with the plot, another divergence for me. You remember the police officer who's suspicious of Cassie and eventually takes her down to the Earth pool. What I want to do with this first movie is give all the characters their little bit of character arc. Cassie, at the start of book 1 in the books, and for the first few books, let's be honest, doesn't really have character. She is, as I've said several times, she's a Mary Sue. Understandable in the books that it would develop away from that, but in the movie here, we need to make sure that she isn't just seen as this Mary Sue character. I'm sorry, but we can't have that. The police officer. Instead of him taking her down to the Earth pool, she kills him. He sees her morphing, and she's like, oh damn, he's seen me, what do I do, what do I do? And she ends up taking him down. Maybe he bangs his head when she tackles him, and he dies. That is immediately putting the emotional turmoil on Cassie, which can then carry on through the rest of the film/films. And I think that's a good way to just throw Cassie into the mix straight away. Throw her into the emotional roller coaster, the moral hypocrisy, and all that. Just give it to her from the start by giving her this action. I think what we need to do then is introduce plot 2. So they find out that Chapman is a controller through Melissa. And they go into Chapman's house. Rachel has a part with Melissa. But then they go into Chapman's basement. He has to talk with Vista 3. But they also find out from Chapman where the Yerk pool is. And they find out what it is. That's my idea. A bit different from, obviously, the books. But this is just how I'm doing it. So they find out where the Yerk pool is, or where a Yerk pool entrance is via Chapman. So they eventually come out of that. We skip the end scene from book 2. We don't need that bit. So the next mission is to go to the Yerk pool itself. In terms of Tobias's character development, I think it should be pretty straightforward for him. We see how crap his life is, how he lives with parents who just abuse him, basically. And he gets bullied at school, and everything about his life is just hell. He goes along with this, and of course at the end of the movie, because the Yerk pool scene in my mind would be the climax of that movie, at the end he gets trapped in Hawk Body. So we get this whole movie of him hating his human life, and then suddenly he no longer has it, and that can lead into further plots in the next films in this film franchise. Now there's one other big difference, one other very big difference that I want to put into this movie, but I think it could work. So just hear me out. I remember when Sev Ohanian, just earlier today when I found out about Sev Ohanian's tweets, he said no Ellimist though. So he's basically implying that he didn't want the Ellimist in his script. When I came up with this, my plot idea a couple of days ago, I was working on similar wavelengths, not to that extent. Throughout this movie, in little bits here or there, there's going to be a subplot. It's going to start on Vissel 1's blade ship. Not blade ship, mothership, pool ship, what have you. So out in space. So we get to see alien spacecraft flying around in space and just the insides of the Yerk fortresses, essentially. Because I think that's important as well in this movie to establish what the bad guys look like and the extent to which they are invading and where they are. Maybe they're off on another planet somewhere. But my idea is there's Vissa 1 there, and we see her. We don't know who she is yet. That comes later. So we just see Vissa 1, she's there. But behind her and doing their controllery things are Jara and Ket under Yerk control. And we see them doing their things, and then suddenly we see them, their Yerks come out and they get thrown into cages, and we see them for their true characters. And they're a romantic couple. Here's your love interest of the story. Granted with giant space lizards, but it's better than nothing, I suppose. And all throughout these little subplot bits, we're seeing them go about Yerk businesses, seeing the atrocities that the Yerks are putting all these different hosts through. So we're seeing it all from that part, rather than just leaving it to the imagination of the audience what the Yerks are getting up to. Or rather than just leaving it to the one Yerk pool scene at the end of book 1. Give a more broader view of what the Yerks have been getting up to. And we're seeing it from Jara and Ket's point of view, with Vissa 1 in the background. And then at some point, they're transported down into Vissa 3's ownership. Wrong word, but that'll do for now. And they travel down to the Yerk pool beneath the Animorphs town. And they've still got their love interest going on and what have you. But then they start to hear a strange voice in their head. And it's never revealed who it is, at least not in this movie. But they're hearing strange voices telling them to do random things. And they're like, what's all this about then? But that carries on. And when the Animorphs do eventually come into the Yerk pool to have the end of Book 1 battle, the Elmist, or this mysterious voice, is telling the Hork-Bajir what to do. They're currently in cages. And tells them to run with the Animorphs at the opportune moment. And they run out with the Animorphs. So then the end of the movie is the Animorphs escaping from Yerk pool, and they've got Jara and Ket with them. Which means that when another movie comes along, we've already essentially established the Hork-Bajir backstory. They don't need to be in the second film because that's the time where Toby Hammy needs to be born and then she could come into a future film. It just gives us that time rather than just... Because in the books, it was just like filler books. Just filling up that time. Not so much filler books, but you know what I mean. But yeah, it establishes that. And, you know, it's a hopeful... Because you've got the bad part at the end where Tobias gets stuck a Hawk, the hopelessness part, but then you've also got the hope part, the hope and the hopeless. So Jara and Ket are rescued, Tobias is doomed to life as a Hawk, and that's where the film ends. Or is it? Because the final frame, now you notice I haven't talked about Margot's character arc so far in this. Up to this point, he's basically as he is in the books, sort of like, all right, fine, I'll do it. The last shot of the movie, he comes into his bedroom, sits on his bed, picks up a photo of his family, himself, his dad, and his mother. And that's the first time the camera sees, oh shit, Vissel One, who we were seeing on that ship up there, is Margot's mother. Film cuts. How'd you like it? That's my idea. I hope you do like it. If you've got any ideas of your own, please tell me in the comments below. Any thoughts about the movie in general, please tell me that as well. Let's gear ourselves up for this, team. Let's get into this. Right. Next step for me now is to go watch episode 21 of the TV show and probably get very annoyed. So I'm going to go do that. You go enjoy the rest of your day. Okay? Or else. See you next time. Ta-ra.